Welcome to this explainer. You know that feeling when you watch an absolute master at work? Maybe it's a world-class musician, a brilliant business analyst, or just a top-tier engineer solving a problem in seconds? And you think to yourself, wow, I could never do that. They are just gifted. Well, if you've ever felt that way, you are in the exact right place today. We're going to break down the exact playbook on how anyone, and yes, I literally mean anyone, can learn to master really difficult subjects and do it faster. We're going to completely transform the way you think about learning, taking it from this frustrating chore and turning it into a highly efficient biological process.
So let's just address the elephant in the room right off the bat and ask the big question. Are experts born or made? For centuries, our culture has been absolutely obsessed with this myth of the natural-born genius. We really love the romantic idea that talent is just genetically gifted to a lucky few, and the rest of us, well, we just have to settle for being average. But as we dig into the science and the data today, we're going to completely challenge that. Because it turns out, science tells an entirely different and honestly, much more empowering story.
Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the myth of innate talent, move into the biology of expertise, open up the Accelerated Learning Playbook, explore paths to world-class status, and wrap up with your practical action plan.
Part 1. The myth of innate talent. Let's completely debunk this genius myth.
Look, we've all been there, right? You try to learn a complex new skill, you hit a steep learning curve, you stumble, and your immediate internal thought is just, I don't have the talent for this. It's an incredibly common frustration. But the thing is, it's a complete psychological trap that stops us from reaching our true potential. Researcher Carol Dweck's groundbreaking work on the psychology of learning actually proves this. On the left side, we have the fixed mindset. This is the belief that your abilities are basically carved in stone at birth. If you believe this, your brain naturally puts up mental blocks. You'll avoid difficult challenges because, well, failing makes you look dumb. But on the right, look at the growth mindset. This treats the brain like a muscle. It embraces the fact that abilities develop through relentless effort and that failures aren't roadblocks, they're simply teachers pointing you in the right direction. It is literally the difference between saying, I'm not good at this, and saying, I'm not good at this, yet.
Honestly, it all really boils down to this one crucial truth. Hard work beats talent until talent starts working hard. I want you to really internalize this quote to completely dismantle that limiting belief that your IQ, or maybe the education level of your parents, or some innate genetic gift determines your ultimate ceiling for success. Experts are made. The effort you put in heavily outweighs the natural gifts you happen to start with.
Section 2. The Biology of Expertise. Let's dive into the neuroscience of skill.
I promised you we would look under the hood of the human brain to see exactly how ordinary people physically transform themselves into world-class performers. And that is exactly what we're going to do right now. The entire foundation of accelerated learning sits on this one single word: neuroplasticity. See, up until the 1960s, scientists thought your brain structure was pretty much permanent by adulthood. We now know that's totally false. Neuroplasticity means your brain is as malleable as a mound of wet clay. It continues to physically change, adapt, and create brand new neural pathways based on the experiences you give it and the focused stress you apply to it well into old age.
So, what does this physical rewiring actually look like? Well, let's talk about myelin. Myelin is a fatty tissue that acts almost like insulation around the wiring of your brain, your neurons. It dramatically increases the speed and the strength of your electrical signals, which are essentially your thoughts. When researchers scan the brains of expert classical pianists, they don't find magic in there. They find significantly higher amounts of myelin in the regions controlling motor skills and auditory processing. The more you practice, the more myelin physically wraps around your neurons, literally speeding up your brain. Expertise is physical flesh and blood.
Now, there is a bit of a dark side to this biology. 14%. This brilliantly illustrates why self-care isn't just some trendy wellness fad. It is a mandatory cognitive requirement. Chronic stress keeps your brain in this permanent fight-or-flight mode, constantly flooded with cortisol. And studies show this chronic stress can actually shrink your hippocampus, which is the memory processing center of your brain, by up to 14%. That is huge. If you aren't sleeping properly, exercising to get that blood flowing, and just taking time to recover, you are literally shrinking your biological capacity to become an expert. Sleep and exercise, they are just as important as studying.
Section 3. The Accelerated Learning Playbook. Time to open up the expert playbook.
Okay, so having proven that the brain is this highly adaptable muscle that needs targeted exercise, it is time to introduce the practical, everyday tactics to actually build that brain muscle efficiently. Let's ground ourselves in our foundational source material for this explainer, Accelerated Learning for Expertise by Peter Hollins. The strategies we're about to explore are specifically designed to bypass your short-term memory limits and embed knowledge deeply into your long-term memory banks. We want this information to stick so you aren't just constantly relearning the exact same things over and over.
A highly efficient way to build this muscle is through something called spaced repetition. If you want to remember complex facts for a certification exam or a major project at work, a 20-hour weekend cramming session is just highly inefficient. Don't do it. Instead, space it out. Learn the initial facts on a Monday morning. Do an active recall session that same Monday night. Then, try to recall it completely without notes on Tuesday morning. By exposing your brain to information frequently, in these short bursts with sleeping periods in between, you basically force your brain to solidify those neural pathways. You really need to start measuring your studying by the frequency of your exposures, not the duration of your misery. Next step in the playbook is chunking. Psychology has proven that your short-term memory can really only hold about 7 distinct items at a time. This is known as George Miller's famous magic number 7. If you look at the unstructured grocery list on the left, that's 7 separate items fighting for very limited space in your brain. But look at the chunked version on the right. By grouping those exact same items into 3 meaningful categories, carbs, meat, and vegetables, you've essentially hacked your brain's limits. It is vastly easier for your brain to process 3 conceptual chunks than 7 scattered random data points. And you can apply this exact same logic to complex engineering formulas, historical timelines, or massive financial models.
Now, to really cement that knowledge, you need retrieval practice and context. Simply highlighting a textbook or passively rereading notes is a waste of time. You have to force active recall. Make your brain sweat to pull the information out. Create complex flashcards that don't just ask for a basic definition, but ask you to describe the opposite of a concept or even write a quick movie plot based on the concept. Also, try changing your physical study location every couple of hours. Your brain ties memories to your environmental context, so a new room creates a brand new neural hook. Studies even show that physically clenching your right fist while studying can create physical memory associations. It sounds wild, but it's true. You want to build as many varied roads to the information in your brain as possible.
Section 4. Paths to world-class status. Let's talk about becoming the master.
So we know how to absorb information, but how do we acquire the right, high-level information to begin with? How do we map our journey to the very top of our respective fields? Well, it starts with how you consume your source material. We need to talk about analytical reading. True experts don't just superficially scan words on a page, they interrogate the material. True learning requires taking the book out of the author's hands and making it your own. If you're reading something as complex as Stephen Hawking's A Brief History of Time, don't just nod along like you agree with everything. Actively challenge his theories right there in the margins. Ask questions, compare it to other sources, have a literal debate with the text. That level of deep analytical engagement is exactly what separates the novices from the masters.
And to accelerate this whole process, you should find an exemplar, a role model whose exact path you can emulate. First, identify the absolute top leaders in your field. Second, take a step back and honestly assess the knowledge gap between where you are today and where they are. Third, and please, this is incredibly important, study relentlessly on your own first. You absolutely must do the hard independent research before you ever ask an expert for their time. Fourth, once you have that solid foundation, you can persuade them to share their insights with you. And fifth, you must learn to actively pull knowledge from them using highly specific questions, rather than just showing up and expecting them to spoon-feed you the basics.
Finally, Section 5, your practical action plan. Let's map your expertise.
Let's bring this entire explainer home with a highly actionable roadmap that you can literally start using today to systematically build your expertise. This is a brilliant framework called Building the Minimum Viable Expert, or MVE. You see, you don't need to know every single granular detail of a field to be considered an expert. You just need to know the core pillars that actually move the needle. Here's exactly how you do it. Step 1. Identify 5 major thought leaders in a field, like, say, Warren Buffett in finance. Step 2. Create individual visual mind maps charting the core principles of each of those experts. Step 3. Actively research and fill in the specific knowledge gaps where you personally lack understanding. And Step 4. Combine everything into one giant master mind map. By isolating and studying the overlapping principles of the top 5 minds in your industry, you are creating an incredible, almost unfair shortcut to elite understanding.
Now, as a quick reality check here, as you build your mind maps and start applying spaced repetition, I want to gently remind you to be patient with yourself. The Dreyfus model of expertise charts a very clear 5-level journey for all of us. Everyone begins as a novice, relying on strict rules, guides, and little recipes just to function. But over time, as you apply the accelerated learning tactics we've discussed today, you will move through the ranks. Eventually, you will evolve into an expert who operates not on strict rules, but on deep, fluid intuition. It takes time for sure, but the neuroscience proves without a doubt that your brain is fully capable of making that leap.
So, having unlocked the biology of your brain and the exact playbook used by world-class learners, we're left with one final, incredibly exciting question to ponder. What will you become an expert in today? The myth of innate talent is dead. The biological tools and the tactical frameworks are right there, waiting for you to use them. Your brain is a muscle that is just waiting to be exercised and rewired. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope you feel as empowered and energized as I do. Now go out there and start building your mastery.